Good evening, friends. Today we shall turn our attention to the payment terms in the international trade. As we have seen earlier, in international trade there are various regulatory aspects. There are aids to trade that facilitate trade between two nations. There are export promotion agencies which makes life easier for the exporters, and the Incoterms and other key guidelines released by the International Chamber of Commerce come to the assistance of the buyer and seller in drafting the international trade contract. There are risks: the payment risk, the price risk, and the goods risk, and the key considerations could be the culture, financial, legislative, and customs procedures in these nations. Coming to payment terms, there are various ways in which an international trade can be settled. It could be payment in advance, documentary collection, documentary credit, open account, or forfeiting. The customer could also choose to have a payment instrument to facilitate this transaction. We can look at these in detail. The payment instrument chosen could be bill of exchange, promissory note, or any similar instrument. This could or could not be part of the other payment method. The payment method, payment in advance, is the payment coming in well in advance. Documentary collection is documents going through the bank. Forfeiting is receivable financing. Documentary credit is bank giving a promise to make payment for a shipment. And open account is there is no promise or guarantee by anybody. In payment in advance, it could be shipment X number of days after payment. Could be immediately after payment or 180 days after payment. It could be so many ways. Depends upon whether it is made to order or made to ship goods. It could also be shipment immediately on payment. Why a buyer and seller choose to have payment in advance as a method of payment? The seller doesn't have the pre-shipment finance facility or the risk appetite on this particular country or the party, and so the seller is not willing to ship. Or alternatively, the buyer wants to build trust and buyer is comfortable with the vendor's reputation, and so he is willing to pay the money in advance so that the goods will come. Documentary collection. In a documentary collection, the tenor could be at site or say 60 days from shipment, 60 days from invoice, 60 days from presentation, etc. The risk is that in case of a site transaction, and if there is a control over goods, the buyer will be able to release the goods from the bank, release the goods from the shipping company only after releasing the documents from the bank. The documents from the bank could get released only after payment if it is a site transaction. If there is no control over goods in the form of control over documents, then we don't have this comfort. Also, even if there is control over goods in the form of control over documents, that is, the documents are consigned to the bank and something like that, if we have a situation where it is say 60 days from shipment, and if the documents are accepted by the party, and if the documentary delivery terms state that against acceptance the documents could be delivered, there is a chance that the buyer will take the documents from the bank, release the goods and sell it to the market, but may not pay on the 60th day. So, under documentary collection, banks do not have any other role to effect payment but to collect and present. So, there is a chance that the supplier will be losing his money. How we can mitigate this risk? We go in for avalization. Avalization is co-acceptance. Co-acceptance is pour aval, which means in addition to the party accepting the bill of exchange, the bank will also add their acceptance to the particular bill of exchange. So there is a promise by the bank to pay on 60th day, and if the applicant does not fund his account, the bank will pay. So there is a limited control over payment by means of exercising control over goods, which in turn is in the form of constructive control over the documents, where the documents are documents to title, documents are consigned to the bank, and unless and until the banks release the documents, these goods will not be released, and so payment is guaranteed. This is one way of looking at it. Another is to have it avalized so that bank will have a promise. The third one will be to have the documents sent at site for collection and deliver the documents only against payment. Now let us turn our attention to documentary credit. In documentary collection, we saw that there is no guarantee from the bank for payment. And so we have a documentary credit situation. The tenor could be at site or X days from shipment, X days from presentation, X days from acceptance, or 60 days from invoice, anything, any combinations. The risk for the applicant is that if he does not specify exactly what documents he wants, what are the terms and conditions to be met, and what stipulated document should evince what terms and condition, then there is a risk that he may not get the goods that he is looking for. The risk for the beneficiary is a documentary risk, that the documents he submitted turns out to be discrepant when it reaches the issuing bank. The other risk are the bank and country risk, where the issuing bank or the issuing country is unable to honor their commitment on due date. These risks can be taken care of by having a nominated bank who will take up the responsibility for negotiating, and by having a confirming bank who will add their confirmation to take care of the bank and country risks. Let us turn our attention to open account. Open account is payment immediately on shipment or payment X days after shipment, which means shipment precedes payment, which means the supplier is out of goods and out of cash and is awaiting concession from the buyer to remit his money. The advantage for the buyer is he will be able to inspect the goods, he will be able to sell the goods in the market, realize the money, and then pay for it. When do people choose this open account? When the seller is cash rich, he is able to part with the goods and wait for the money to come, give credit. Or if it is mass produced goods and there is no customization required and they are looking for ways and means to push the goods into the market. The other one will be, if the buyer is felt to be credit worthy, then the seller will be willing to go in for open account. Let us look at the payment instrument. Whatever be the payment term, the buyer may not choose one of the payment instruments. The payment instruments could be bill of exchange, pronote, etc. The advantage of having an instrument like a negotiable instrument like bill of exchange is that the UNCITRAL rules will come into help. It's also that there are various national legislations which come to the help. In other words, in countries where the English law or the British system is followed, you have a facility to proceed against a non-payment in a criminal court in addition to the civil liability payable under the sales contract. What is a bill of exchange? It is a commitment. It is an unconditional commitment. It is available to be transferred or negotiated, which means it has a title which can be transferred. Okay, the transfer can be to the bearer or by endorsement and delivery. What does a bill of exchange say? It says a certain amount is payable on a specific date. What is the benefit of having a bill of exchange? It is discountable. What is the benefit to the holder? The holder has a benefit of holder in due course. What do you mean by holder in due course? If you have taken the bill of exchange in good faith, if you had paid consideration for it, and if you took it without any notice of defect, then you can proceed against all the parties and nobody can proceed against you, irrespective of the defect in the title on the document prior to it. How do we explain this? Suppose somebody had stolen or a thief had given a bill of exchange to you, and if you had given valuable consideration to him, and if you are not aware of the fact that it could have been a stolen or a stolen instrument, then nobody can proceed against you in a court of law for non-honor. And when you proceed against those parties, you will be having holder in due course rights to proceed against others. What is protest? In case of bill of exchange is not paid on due date, you have an option to legally go and present it through a notary public once again and record it on the bill of exchange that it has not been paid, so that you can go to a court of law. Forfeiting. Forfeiting is, if there is a series of incoming payments over a long period of time, then those payments are purchased by a forfeiter and then lump sum cash payment made to the person who is having these receivables. It is done in international trade, mostly for medium term. So thus in international trade we have seen various risks, and we shall come back with another lecture. Thanks for watching and have a nice evening. Goodbye.